Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining us. My name is Dalia and I work as a community manager here at Kong. I'm very happy to welcome you all to our user call this month. The topic for today is API secrets management. What are the best practices for integrating Kong Gateway with your favorite identity manager? We have Simon Green here today. I'll let him introduce himself. Please input all of your questions in the Q&A function on the bottom, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Please, Simon, take it away from here.
Perfect. Thanks, Dalia. And pleased to meet everyone. My name's Simon Green, and I'm going to be talking about API secrets management within the context of Kong. So first off, just a short agenda of what I'm going to be covering today. I'm going to first off just start by introducing myself, a little bit about my background and my experience. Also, I'm going to cover some of the buzzwords and acronyms that you might have heard in the realm of security management and identity management, and just clear up some of those. I'm also going to talk about a case study that I've worked on in my past life, and go into a little bit of detail around some of the best practices to use when dealing with secrets management. And then I'm going to deep dive into secrets management functionality within the context of Kong and how it applies to Kong. I'm also going to do a demonstration and walk through this functionality. So we're going to use a key vault to store some secrets. And then at the end of today's session, we'll have some time for Q&A. And with that, let's get started. So first off, my name's Simon Green. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Kong. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts in the US. I've been at Kong for just over a year and a half. Before that, I started off as a Java developer about 25 years ago, but my career focus has definitely been enterprise application integration. And I've worked on with different community projects like Apache Camel and Apache Kafka and Apache ActiveMQ. And yeah, for the last few years, I've kind of taken a different path. I played around for a little bit at HashiCorp and worked with HashiCorp Vault and Terraform and those cool tools. And now I'm working at Kong in the sales division, but I'm technical sales. So that's a little bit about me. So first off, I just wanted to clear up some of the buzzwords and acronyms, and just a small shout out to one of my colleagues, Sven, for calling this out, that in the title there is a small mistake. I refer to identity management. And what we're going to be covering today isn't really identity management. It's more centered around secrets management and vaults for storing keys, certificates, etc. But yeah, this is just a small example of some of the different buzzwords and acronyms you might have heard. Identity management is really identity and access management. It's more around user identity or usernames, how you can store those, what the roles, permissions, and groups that user belongs to. Then you have secrets management, which is more focused on app-to-app credential storage. So how do we store SSH keys or MTLS certificates or keys or anything like that that might be required for app-to-app identification. So within the secrets management realm, you have tools or platforms like a vault, and a vault is an identity-based secrets and encryption management system. So a secret is anything that you want to tightly control access to. So that could be an API encryption key or a password or a certificate. And a vault is somewhere to store that. Now, the tricky thing is with some vaults, I'm thinking HashiCorp Vault, it can actually act as an identity provider, like as a OIDC, IDP. So that's also something that can kind of throw people because both identity management and secrets management can almost be used interchangeably, and they often are. So yeah, just be careful of that. But for today's conversation, I'm going to be purely focused on these two topics, which is secrets management and how you can use a vault to store secrets and interface that vault with Kong. So first off, I want to talk about a case study. It's actually a customer. It's not a Kong customer, but a customer that I worked with in my former life. And they were an Apogee customer. And this doesn't just apply to Apogee. It could apply to any API gateway. But in the before section here of this picture, they were using Apogee as an OAuth provider. They were making good use of the gateway and the developer portal. And they also use the Apogee KVM store. And KVM stands for Key Value Map. And this is essentially just a database where you can store credentials or anything, any kind of key value metadata. So they were storing all kinds of weird and wonderful things in this KVM store. Could be like service accounts for Windows or credentials for Oracle ERP or Siebel or even Salesforce tokens. So essentially what happened is the Apogee KVM store ended up becoming the enterprise-wide secrets management store for the whole organization. And unfortunately, the KVM store isn't a purpose-built place to store credentials. It's not really a good place to store SSH keys. And so what ended up happening is you had administrators sending out certificates via email, sharing keys via email, and it just led to something that we call secret sprawl. And secret sprawl is bad because once secrets are out there in the wild, they're very difficult to control. You need some way to revoke them. You still need some kind of control over them. So what this customer tried to do is move ahead with HashiCorp Vault, which is a purpose-built secrets management platform. And they said, okay, at first look, let's just try and integrate Vault with the Apogee KVM. And the problem with that is you basically have this issue where, what is going to be the true system of record? And how do you keep each system of record in sync? And the only way to do that was to write some kind of custom code and maintain that custom code to keep both key stores in sync. So this is a common kind of approach that people try and attempt and often fail, just because you've got custom code to write and also you no longer have a true system of record. You're constantly trying to keep them in sync. And this is a trap, not just with Apogee, but with a lot of API gateways, because this kind of integration doesn't come out of the box until now. So with Kong, we've recently added, like late last year, a secrets management platform. And the beauty of this is it provides integration with a variety of different purpose-built key vaults. So just to take note, so at Kong, we believe it's super bad practice to be storing secrets in your gateway. So you really want to avoid storing stuff in the KVM store. So what we prefer is kind of integrate the gateway directly with your system of record, in this case, a Vault, and then you can store things like certificates, keys, credentials, anything that's relevant to your API. Okay, and with that, we're able to start reaping the benefits of things like dynamic secrets, where secrets are generated on demand and unique to that particular client, instead of generating static secrets, which are defined ahead of time and shared. And the other really nice thing about tools like HashiCorp Vault or AWS Secrets Manager is that you can administer and automate PKI infrastructure directly from the Vault and not through the gateway. And this way, the Vault can quickly create things like MTLS certificates on demand and reduce that manual overhead of managing, revoking, rotating certificates via the gateway, which is what you really want to avoid. So we originally launched the secrets management functionality back in Gateway version 2.8 as a beta, but now it's fully graduated to GA and to full support. And for open source users, we support dynamic secrets in the form of environment variables. So there is an option to use this functionality as a community user. Now with Kong Enterprise, we're providing out-of-the-box integration with, at the moment, AWS Secrets Manager, HashiCorp Vault, and GCP Secrets Manager. And I also believe Azure, the Azure Key Vault in the future as well. So the last thing that you want to keep in mind with secrets management is it not only applies to deployment time, where you might want to substitute, say, the database credentials in your Helm chart, in your values.yaml, or in your environment properties file with something more dynamic, but it also applies to the runtime as well. So how can I retrieve secrets and facilitate MTLS flows? So for both client auth, but also upstream service auth, while storing those certificates and credentials in an external key vault. Okay, so with that, I thought I might start by doing a demonstration. What I'm going to do is actually demonstrate this flow here. So we talked about the deployment time, secrets management, and runtime secrets management. This demo is going to be focused on the runtime secrets management aspect. So what I'm going to try and secure is the connection between Kong and the upstream MTLS server. And what Kong is going to do is use that new secrets management functionality to retrieve the MTLS private key and certificate from AWS Secrets Manager, and it's going to cache that for me. So the flow will be, I'm going to use Insomnia, which is my design time tool, to send a request to Kong, and then Kong is going to retrieve those credentials, those MTLS certificates at runtime and cache them if they're not already in the cache, get the response back from the MTLS server, which I'm just running locally on my laptop, and do some kind of client auth there, and then return that response back to Insomnia. Okay, so really the only MTLS piece is steps 4 and 5. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you what I've configured. So first off, let's maybe just start with AWS Secrets Manager. There isn't really that much to do here. I just, I think I created a new MTLS certificate with OpenSSL, something like that. And what I've created and stored is the client key, which I have here. So there's just my little private key. And then I have the client certificate. So just 2 pieces of information that are stored in my vault, which can be administered by some kind of administrator. Now within Kong, this is what I've done. So today I'm going to be using Connect Cloud, and so this also applies to regular Kong open source and Kong Enterprise. But what I've done is I've created well, first off, I've got a vault entry here at the bottom. So here you have the ability to create that integration with the vault, either for environment variables, for AWS Secrets Manager, HashiCorp Vault, and it will prompt you, it gives you like a little bit of a wizard to set up that particular key vault if you want to store things like a group of credentials together. So in my case, I'm just going to store everything in the regular AWS vault. What I've also done is I've created a certificate entry. So this is just a regular certificate. And what's interesting about this one is rather than copy and paste my OpenSSL certificates here, my MTLS certificates here, I've now got this URL syntax. And it starts off with indicating vault. I'm using the AWS Secrets Manager vault, and then I just copy and paste the AWS ARN there. And I've done that for both the certificate and the key. Okay, so rather than having that private key or certificate directly copy and pasted and stored in Kong, I now have it stored and referenced from Kong, but it's actually stored in the Secrets Manager vault. Okay. So the second piece of the second step that I did was actually create the upstream service. So you'll notice here I've got the local MTLS service defined here, and I've got that. So my my Kong proxy runtime instance is running in Docker. So to refer to my local host, you have to use this syntax, the host.docker.local. But that's the host, that's the port of my upstream server. And then I have a reference ID to that client certificate that I've got stored in AWS Secrets Manager, okay? And then the route, there's nothing really that fancy about the route that I've created. It's just a regular route, just listening for requests on /MTLS, okay? So let's just have a look at what I've got in Docker. So I just have a regular Kong runtime instance running version 3.1. Now, what I can do is, here are my logs. If I go over to terminal, I can actually test my connectivity with Secrets Manager from the Kong command line. So I'm just going to copy this command. And if I run this, sure enough, I get back my private key. So what this proves is that I have connectivity from my Kong runtime instance or data plane to AWS Secrets Manager. Okay. And just some things to note. So if we just go back to the documentation, here's the secrets management documentation. These are the different types of credentials that you can actually store in the vault and can be referenced from Kong Gateway. So things like data store usernames, passwords, say for your Postgres database or Redis cache, MTLS certificates, API keys, or anything that's particularly sensitive, any kind of sensitive plugin information, okay? This document also talks a little a bit about the URL syntax and what's referenceable within that URL. And then we have a list here of the different plugins, the different Kong plugins where you can use that vault reference as well. So yeah, so for today, I'm just using the regular service. I don't have any plugins associated, but any of these plugins here will work. And then we just list at the bottom the different supported backends that we use. And in today's case, for today's demo, I'm just using AWS Secrets Manager as my supported backend. Okay. There's more information here about the different format for the URL, for instance. So here it goes into into more detail about the URL syntax. So we just are using the AWS vault, and then we're referencing the secret and the key using the ARN. That seems to be the standard. So there's quite a bit of information here if you need to learn more. Okay, let's go over to VS Code and have a look at my MTLS server. So here I've just got my MTLS server. I'm going to start that up. And I'll just type my password in so that it starts. And it's just going to, it wants to listen on port 443 locally. So if I go over to Insomnia now and try and send a request now that that's listening, all goes well, I get back a hello from the test server. So I know that it's been proxied through Kong, and I don't know if I get any logging information. At the moment, I don't get any logging information. But just to prove that this is not a false positive, let's go ahead and remove that client certificate entry from the service to see what happens. So if I go back to Connect, and we'll go ahead and edit that service. And I'll just remove that client certificate entry. I'll click Save. I'll go back to Insomnia. Give that a moment to apply. I now get a 502 bad gateway, indicating that there was some kind of invalid response from the upstream MTLS server. And if I go and check the logs, sure enough, I get back an error message that client doesn't provide a certificate. That's because Kong didn't provide a client certificate to my upstream. So if I go back and reverse that, we go ahead and just add that certificate back. I'll go ahead and paste that. And then I'll go back to Insomnia and send a request. And sure enough, now it's working again. Okay. And just in terms of configuration, you can either do the point and click ops like I just did through the management user interface, but you could also use the admin API to do this. Or if you wanted to do it declaratively, you could just create a deck file like I've done here. So rather than embedding certificates and private keys into your deck file, what we have now is just a reference, just a URL reference to the client cert and the client key in AWS Secrets Manager. And the reason you want to do that is it would be very easy for a developer to take this deck file and accidentally check it into Git and have all kinds of credentials stored in that deck file. So it could be the private key, the certificate, what have you. And then all of those credentials have been leaked out into the wild. And that's the kind of secret sprawl that you want to avoid. And by storing all of that in AWS Secrets Manager, in this case, you're avoiding that secret sprawl, okay? So I've got certificates and keys there. I've also got, just a reference there for that particular client certificate in my service. And then everything else is just what you saw, which I just demonstrated through the point and click ops. Perfect. So that concludes the demo portion. So what I just showed you is how to configure the integration between Kong Gateway and AWS Secrets Manager using the new secrets management functionality. And again, the reason you would want to do that is to avoid using a key value map store like we saw with Apogee, and storing those kind of credentials in your gateway and having those credentials stored in a purpose-built vault instead. So that's something that you might want to consider. This is kind of more of a best practice way where you don't have, you're not trying to kind of keep two different systems of records in sync, and just have one kind of true system of record, which is the vault. Okay. So if any of you are interested in signing up for Connect Cloud, here's the link that you can sign up for. Connect Cloud is what I just demonstrated. It's where the control plane of Kong is hosted in the cloud by us. It's managed by us. And then you manage or self-manage the runtime instances, the little data plane proxies. And it's open. There's a free tier. So anyone in the community can register. I think even my two dogs have registered multiple times for Connect Cloud. So it's open to the community. And please go ahead and kick the tires and feel free to try out the new secrets management functionality that you just saw. So I'm going to open it up to move on to the Q&A section and see if we've got any questions that have come in. It looks like we have a question from Eric, who asked, do I need the enterprise version of Vault to use this feature? And the answer is no. You can use just the regular open source version of Vault. That will work. You don't need the enterprise version. I believe the enterprise version of HashiCorp Vault can add all kinds of different features. It's enterprise hardened, etc. But no, the short answer is that you can just use regular open source Vault for that particular use case. Perfect. And then is there any planned support for CyberArk? Okay, that's a really good question. At the moment, I haven't seen it on the roadmap. If there is a particular customer out there that would want to use CyberArk, possibly, but at the moment it's not there. We focused on supporting most of the cloud provider vaults, like AWS was first, and then of course HashiCorp Vault, because that's quite a common one, GCP, and then Azure, and then I'm sure our product folks will look at other vaults like CyberArk in the future. So thanks for that question. Did I use an open source MTLS server for your testing? Is there a GitHub source for users to play with? Yes, I did. I did use an open source one. I do have the link somewhere. I'd have to dig it out. But yeah, it's actually a very useful little test stub. But I can definitely share that GitHub link with you afterwards. I'll put it in the comments of the video that gets published for sure. So yeah, thank you for that question. So the next question I have is, what is the minimum version of Kong Enterprise to get the vaults feature? So the minimum version will be 2.8, which was released. So the beta version came in 2.8. So you would need to start using that, that version of Kong Enterprise. And looks like the next question from AJ is this available with the on-premise enterprise installation of Kong? The answer is yes. It does work not only with Connect, which you saw today, but it does work with the on-premise flavors of Kong. And I believe DB-less as well, not just the persisted, stateful installation of Kong, but also it would work with DB-less as well. Another question from Eric. How do you limit access to secrets in Vault for different developer teams through workspaces? Yeah, so at least in the context of Connect, you do have the ability to use the Teams and RBAC features. So you would be able to use, provide some kind of RBAC around that. And yeah, you could do it through workspaces or through runtime groups as well. Yeah, that's also possible. And looks like we've got another question from Santosh. Do we have to store the credentials anywhere on the Kong gateway? And the answer is no. That's the whole beauty of all of this. You don't have to store the credentials at all. The only thing that you do need to be aware of is the AWS credentials. So I kind of glossed over this a little bit, but to log into my AWS version, you need things like the access key, AWS access key, secret access key, region, session token, security token. I provided all of those as I just exported them as environment variables, but I believe we do support the other version, the other form of authentication with AWS. I forget what it's called. But yeah, we support two different authentication methods with your Vault. So yeah, but the short answer is no, you don't need to store credentials anywhere on the Kong gateway. And it looks like we've got another question that's come in. Is Connect going to become the go-to version of Kong going forward, such that cool features like Kong Secrets Manager will appear there first? Sort of, kind of. So yes, we are leading with Connect at the moment. We're pushing out all the latest and greatest features there. At the moment, Kong Gateway Enterprise is still kind of the same parity version. So it's not like, Kong Gateway Enterprise is lagging behind or anything like that. But yeah, we at Kong believe that Connect Cloud is kind of the future in terms of having that, we as in Kong manage the control plane, and you as the user manage the runtime instances. Oh, and it looks like we did have some other questions in the webinar chat, so maybe I can just go through some of those. It looks like Mahendra asked, as Vault is used as the exchange mechanism for other services as a bridge. Yeah, so I think what you're asking is whether or not you can store other metadata in the Vault, and the answer is yes. So there was a list of plugins that I flashed up, like the Kafka plugin, for instance. So there might be some kind of other metadata that you might want to store in a Vault. And yeah, that would be relevant. You probably don't want to store like tons of metadata or tags or anything like that, but generally it's kind of needs to be secrets related, like credentials related. That's really best practice and what you'd want to store in the Vault. Looks like we had another question from Santosh, which is this supported in the community version? The answer is yes, but the only piece that's supported is the kind of deployment time secrets management functionality. And what that means is deployment time is when you're actually deploying Kong. Kong might require credentials for Postgres, for instance, so say an RDS version of Postgres that's running that needs username, password, database host, etc. And all of those could be stored in AWS Secrets Manager or HashiCorp Vault. And then you would want those references actually to appear in your values.yaml file or in the Kong.conf file or whatever you're using to deploy Kong. What we support in the community level is the environment variable substitution of secrets management. Okay. Looks like Patrick was asking whether Azure Key Vault is supported. The answer is not yet. It's almost there, I believe. I'm not sure it's in tech preview yet, but it will be. It should be appearing this year. I know it's on the product roadmap right now. And I can see AJ's question, which I just answered. So Sunshos's. And yeah, thanks for the shout out, Jackie. I'm glad you found that helpful. Tristan said, will there be a feature where Kong Gateway supports renegotiation with the backend based on a set of certificates? Say in a scenario where you cycle a client cert ahead of expiry, have both old and new readily available in the gateway. Not sure. That's definitely a question for the product management folks on how the secrets management functionality will evolve. I don't believe that functionality that you described is there at the moment, but we can definitely check with the product team on what the future is. Okay, it looks like we have another question. In case of using Kong as ingress on Kubernetes, can Kong use the built-in feature of accessing the Vault directly? And the answer is yes, it most definitely is. So when you're using Kong on Kubernetes as the ingress point, it can still communicate, with Vault, and yeah, you'd be able to use that feature that you saw today. So cool. Okay, well, that was a lot of really good questions, folks. I hope you found the demonstration useful, and yeah, I hope you got something out of it. And yeah, I really hope that folks out in the community decide to go ahead and try this new functionality and make good use of it.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was great. Thanks for answering all the questions afterwards. And thanks everyone for asking such great questions. We will upload the recording either later today or tomorrow, and we will include Simon's slides and the link you mentioned, right, Simon?
Yep.
In the comments?
Yep.
Awesome. Any last questions before we call it a day? Nope. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We hope to see you at our next events next month. Have a good evening and good day. See you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. See ya. Bye.